What stands out to you? If you can pick a few things, what stands out to you about the mindsets of the greatest in the world?
Ooh, you just won the biggest answer out of the gate. I love that.
We hit them from the start. Why would I jab when I can throw
around,
just a deadly uppercut?
In right with that big right hook. I love it. So if I were to bring it down to one word, I would say it's discipline. Right. And the reason I use that word is because if you understand what it is to be human, without wishing to sound too sort of macabre out of the gate, to be human is to suffer. Human and suffering are synonymous. It is, as long as I'm human, then suffering is commensurate with that, right? It would be as asinine as me saying, I like to jump in the ocean, but I don't want to get wet. Would be saying, oh, I want to be human, but I don't want to suffer, right? So that's the first thing we have to address out of the gate, is that by virtue of being here in this dimension, in this avatar, this physical meat suit, with the trials and tribulations that we've all been through and the associated constraints of our subconscious that give rise to the internal experience of fear, limitation, and the need to survive, right? It's the primordial imperative of every mammal to try and survive. So our brain is always trying to predict and protect because we want to obviously avoid pain and seek pleasure. That means that we're going to suffer. So to come back to your question, you get to choose how you suffer. Do you suffer by staying within the constraints and managing the world of limitation and trying to avoid suffering, which is a form of regret, which means that you live a smaller life, a very linear track life, where I'm not actually tapping into my potential, but rather I'm trying to avoid pain or I'm trying to avoid embarrassment. It's an avoidant energy. That's one form of suffering. The other form of suffering that I see from the greatest in the world is discipline, which points to, I am committed to transcend, to get beyond, and to break through my constraints versus sit within the comfort/discomfort of them. One is expansive, one is contracting, right? So either way you suffer. So for me, you might as well choose the one that helps you tap into your potential and live an expansive, extraordinary life.
I love it. So what I'm hearing is there's acceptance, and you're not looking at things as is the upward counterfactual thinker always looks at something as, well, this is the worst that happened. The downward counterfactual is, it's not that bad. So is the suffering aspect just more of an acceptance, and then that acceptance plus the discipline is kind of the, foundational formula, would you say?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, it's like, look at the sport that you work a lot in, like basketball, right? If I'm a British guy who's never played and I run onto the court and I pick up a basketball and I just put it under my armpit and I run from one end to the next, like, the guys are like, whoa, dude, you can't do that. Like, you got to bounce that rock, right? So there's certain rules that build into different games, right? And so what I'm saying is, yes, the acceptance component could speak to the fact that one of the rules, albeit not necessarily mutually agreed upon, is that by virtue of being human, you're going to struggle. There's challenges, right? It's the game that we're here for. So what I'm pointing to is sort of then the discipline beyond that, or the choice beyond that, is like, okay, hi, welcome to planet Earth. You are human X, and by virtue of being here, some of the rules are you're going to have challenges, obstacles, trials and tribulations. You're going to experience loss, grief, failure, disappointment, and we're going to put under the big auspices called suffering. Now, the opportunity you have is either you can sit in the regret and be a victim of life, which is one form of suffering, which I would assert is 1,000x worse than the opportunity of the other way of playing the game, which is much of your suffering is by virtue of the fact that you live within these prisons of your subconscious. And the game that a lot of people who are committed to having a more extraordinary life, the game they play is that I want to be able to break through those, transcend them, and overcome them. That's what I'm pointing towards as discipline.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, let's take that a little bit deeper on the subconscious.
Sure. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So reality versus story.
Yes.
It's interesting, right? Like Carl Jung, one of the four founders of the subconscious mind, and his work, and just tapping into the difference of it with the conscious is, when you say, hey, let's tell ourselves this positive story, is it bending what is actual reality, or is reality even a thing? Like, what's the difference when we start telling ourselves these stories of, say, I want to be the best basketball player in the world? Is there danger to that? What do you think when I say reality versus story, and how do we live in this balance of not crossing the line to more of a pathological, just telling ourselves lies?
Sure. I mean, reality, you could say there's sort of an objective reality and then there's a subjective reality, right? And what I'm much more interested in is the subjective reality. How do we react mostly, but hopefully respond, and better than that, create life? So we could say that
I like that.
perspective is reality. Now, not necessarily in terms of the objective, but rather my view of myself is going to dictate the world I live in. If someone's walking around thinking that they are not good enough, that they are a failure, that they are not loved, that is going to give rise to the reality they experience, right? Wherever you go, there you are. So the view that we have of life, which for the most part is something that people are oblivious to, it's a blind spot. But the view that we look through, we are a walking conversation that gives rise to a particular perspective, which then gives rise to our reality, which is actually completely appropriate for the lessons that we're here to learn, as far as I'm concerned, from a karmic perspective, right? Why is it that somebody attracts a particular mate, a particular spouse, that triggers within them the feeling of lack of respect, inadequacy, not being wanted, not being admired? Because that's something that they're here to learn. You obviously are aware of the fact that I write in many quotes, and one of the more popular ones I have that people love is that life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. So you are going to attract the people and circumstances to, in another way of saying that, reveal where you're confined, aka not free. Why is that a gift? Well, because we're here, as far as I'm concerned, to recognize our own true divinity, to recognize that we are timeless, boundless beings, and that freedom is one of our inherent characteristics. And so that's why, for me, the game of being human is not linear. It's not about survival. It's not about progressively making more money, going from an apartment to a home, to a bigger home, to getting more followers, to having a nicer car, to having 2 cars, to getting a boat. That's a linear track. For me, I'm much more interested in the vertical ascension, which is the transcendence of the constraints that we arrive so that we can tap into the boundless nature of our true essence.